My name is Vera Cabrera. I'm the Emerging Technologies Consultant at the North Carolina Department of Education. And so in this role, I lead the AI implementation statewide and try to make sure that we are implementing AI in a way that's safe and responsible, but also that prepares our educators and our students for the future. And just so that you know, I am an educator, I'm a practitioner, I'm not a vendor. And so this is a tool-specific webinar. I don't do those a lot, but NotebookLM is a very, very valuable tool. And so this one is tool specific, but I don't work for Google. I work for the people of North Carolina and North Carolina public schools. And that's what my interest is. I do have on here my LinkedIn profile. If you're on LinkedIn, love to connect with you there. That is my POC. If you're not on there, it's a great place. It's not just a place to get jobs anymore. It's a place to go and nerd out about AI and education and technology and all of those things. So do encourage you to do that if you're not. I do have just a short acknowledgement at the beginning. I like to acknowledge that I do use AI tools to create my content. At this point, 3 years in now, I use AI as a partner every day. It's very difficult to identify every single use because I use it constantly to brainstorm, refine ideas, adapt to different audiences and so forth. But I always use it in a human in the loop approach with me providing human oversight and making final decisions and evaluation. And I also just want to acknowledge Phil Alcock of PBL Future Labs for his leadership, thought leadership. I acknowledge whenever I'm using something specifically for him, but he's just somebody that I draw a lot of inspiration from about NotebookLM as well as about other things. And so I try to acknowledge individually as well, but I just want to put that out there. And so I'm going to go ahead and just do a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, the chat is open and Stacy will leave it open as long as she feels like she can. We had some Zoom bombing going on the other day, so we want to make sure we don't have anything. I guess that's back now. I guess people are bored again and now they're bombing Zoom meetings, so we have to shut that down. But we will have the Q&A open. And so the Q&A with this number of people is going to be an easier way to manage it. And so to get to the Q&A, if you look at the little tic-tac-toe board in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and click that, there should be a Q&A button. And you can click that and open it. And Brian or somebody on my team, if you hop to the Teams meeting, somebody started it again, and tell whoever it is the link to the right meeting. Thank you. But the Q&A, you can open it. You can drop your questions in there. I have several very knowledgeable colleagues on the call who can answer those questions as they come in. And then if I'm needed, they'll stop me and let me know, and we'll discuss things. It is being recorded. I've already said that. Most mics and cameras are off. If you want to turn your camera on and it allows you to, you're welcome to do that. Just trying to keep it running smoothly with a lot of people. And as far as participation goes, again, this is a larger group than normal. And so the participation, just you do you, whatever your comfort level is. If you want to prompt along with me and have a bunch of tabs and windows open and creating and prompting with me, then I encourage you to do that and engage actively. Some people prefer just to kind of listen and take it in and then go back and work at it later on their own pace. So whatever works for you is what I want you to do. But we do have a Padlet, and I'll show you the link for it in a minute. And I do encourage you, if you're creating something either today or after the meeting, that we would love to see it if you want to share on the Padlet. And so those resources, this slide, which we're on slide 4, I think, has several, slide 6. There's several resources on here. And actually, if you just get the first one, it has the links to everything else. I've created a very, very dense companion document, which we will drop in the chat, and it has a lot of links and things to the other resources, the Padlet and everything else, but it also has a lot of prompts and ideas on it that you can just kind of copy and paste and try things out. And so somebody will drop that in the chat if they haven't already. They probably already have, and I encourage you to have that open, and that gets you to everything else. And so we will be working with that a lot. And those other resources are linked in that document as well. There's a NotebookLM that I've created, a shared notebook that you can engage with, and there's that Padlet link that you can go in and add your resources to. And so the Notebook LM is like this. When you open it, you will see that you can see all of my sources. You can chat with, ask your own questions, and then you can also see things that I've created. And this is the notebook that I used as my workflow for creating this webinar. So it has lots and lots of good content in it. And then the Padlet session, or the Padlet, is just a blank Padlet board. You can go down here in the corner and you can add anything that you create, either with a link or you can upload it. And we would love to see everything everybody is creating. So we encourage you to share. Okay, and moving right along then, the idea we're going to talk about is this core shift from being a consumer to being an architect of learning. And when I was a teacher several years ago, almost over a decade ago, I had to accept whatever came with my textbook or whatever I could find online, or Lord forbid, on Teachers Pay Teachers. And I had to try to adapt my teaching and my students and my curriculum to it. We're in an exciting time now in education because you don't have to do that anymore. AI has enabled every teacher to actually be architects of their own learning and create customized, highly customized, personalized content that suits you, the way you teach, your curriculum, your school, your community, your students, instead of the other way around. And it's getting easier to do every day. And NotebookLM is one of my favorite tools for doing that, because there's so many wonderful features that we're going to talk about today that help you move from that passive consumption to active creation. So first of all, just a little about NotebookLM, because we do have several people on our poll who are new to NotebookLM, and so we don't want to assume everybody knows all of this, but we will get to the deep dive very soon. But NotebookLM, if you are signed into it on your school account with your school domain, you're in what's called Google for Education workspace. And in that workspace, you have a private and secure version of NotebookLM that is very different from just going into your private Gmail account and signing in. If you're signed in on your education account, your data is not being trained on. It's not going into the machine to train the AI. And that's a huge distinction for education domains. You can curate all kinds of content, and this content will be grounded in your sources, unlike other models where they're trained on the entire web and all of the creations of mankind. This is going to be one where you're curating your own database, and that's what it's going to be pulling from. And it really is, it makes it very easy to go from analysis to action, and we're going to look at that. So if you think about NotebookLM as a closed box, it will help you to visualize. Now, other large language models, again, they're pulling from this massive database, everything on the internet, including all the seedy underbelly of the internet, like Reddit files and things like that. And they're also pulling from all kinds of books and resources. In NotebookLM, you start with an empty box, and whatever you put in the box is the only thing it's going to be using to gather your answers. And so you're creating your own box or your own content. And you can add lots of sources, and we'll dig into that a little more, what kind of sources you can add in the next slide. But I also just want to touch on this a minute, because protecting our student data privacy is one of our most sacred duties, honestly, in the age that we're living in, age of intelligence and the age of cyber security and cyber hacks and cyber criminals. And so this is a framework that was shared by Phil Alcock, just the easy way to think about what you should and should not put in your NotebookLM. Now, even though it is on a more private version with your education account, you still want to exercise caution. And so things that are free, that are no worries about it all, are things like curriculum maps, your standards, your public policy, blank rubrics, anything that's shared on the internet, your school mission, vision statements, your pacing guides, anything that you can freely upload with no concern. If for the things that you need to kind of proceed with caution is anything that is associated with a student, that has student names or student identifiers, you would need to anonymize that data before you include it, even in a protected environment like NotebookLM. And the things that I would recommend you never upload without explicit information, or explicit permission rather, from your CTO or your superintendent, your district, would be things like IEPs and grade books and personal student information. I just really recommend that we all practice data minimization because of the cybersecurity concerns that are out there and the breaches that have happened. That's the safest route to go. If you absolutely don't need to put it in there, don't. And if you feel like you need to put something that has some private data, you really want to clear that with the people in your district. Okay, and so moving along, the next thing is just getting started, because we did have several people who put a 0 in the chat that they had not used it before. And so it takes 2 minutes to build a notebook, and I'm going to just walk through that process with you right now. So I'm going to split my screen to do it, so bear with me for 1 minute, and I'm going to put NotebookLM on the right. And so to get to NotebookLM, there's a URL on the slide deck there, but it's just notebooklm.google.com. And when you first land on NotebookLM, it's going to give you a button that says try NotebookLM. And when you go there, then you are ready to add sources. And what happened to my split screen? It unsplit on me. Oh, wait, there I am. Okay. So there's my NotebookLM, and I'm going to have to put it back in my split view. Okay. This may not be worth doing. Okay, so anyway, on NotebookLM, when you get there, you click Create Notebook, and then you upload your sources. And I am going to switch this other one back. I want to see this one and this one. Okay, so I'm going to close the right view, and I'm going to replace this with the right view. Up with the right view. Okay, because I want you to see my slides and the notebook at the same time. Okay, so now that I'm in NotebookLM, if you go, it's going to start by adding sources, because remember, it's an empty box right now. Until you put something in it, there's nothing in there. So that's the first thing that you have to do, is put something in it. And so the next slide, it kind of talks about the kinds of things that you can put in it, which are a lot of things. You can put all kinds of resources in it. But I'm going to start by just putting in some standard documents that I have. And I'm going to just go in here and copy a few links that I have already for North Carolina standards. And this time I'm going to focus, I'm going to pretend I'm creating something for my English language arts. And if you are a teacher, I do recommend that every different curriculum that you teach, you create a different notebook for it. And so the things that I've got are just resources that our Department of Curriculum has provided for our English teachers. And you can see that once I've added them, if you look over here in the sources, they're there. So I just added them that quick. So now I have a notebook. 2 minutes, we have a notebook. And the next thing is there are 3 panels here, and we'll look at that on the next slide as well. But I do want to talk about the kinds of resources for just a minute before we do that. And I'm going to click that one more time so you can see the kinds of resources. If I go up there to add sources, you can see you can add Google Drive files, you can add a Google Doc, a Google presentation, a Google spreadsheet is a new one recently. You can add links, which I did, website links. You can add YouTube videos as long as they have closed captioning, which most of them do. You can copy and paste text in, and you can upload files. And if you haven't looked at NotebookLM lately, they've added all kinds of file types that you can upload that you used to not be able to upload, including audio files and video files, all kinds of image files. And so lots of things that you can add to it. And you can do discover sources, but that's just going to go out onto the web and find random sources. Don't really recommend doing that. But notice also the source limit on an education account, that's going to be 100. I'm working in a private account so I can share, and we'll get into that in a minute. But now that I have my sources in, the next thing is, what do I do with them? And so what this does is it provides you a place to engage with your sources and to ask questions of your sources. And so I do want to talk about this limits before I get into that, and I'll show you a chat. But on the education plan, this is whether you're on the standard or a plus, these are your limits, because my limits are a little different. We have up to 100 different notebooks. So that's why I say add different notebooks for different purposes and different classes and different subjects. And in each notebook, you can have up to 50 sources. You can have 50 chats a day. And the podcasts and the video overviews are a little bit limiting with 3 per day. But if you're one of those few people who have Gemini add-on, you've got a lot more. You can have up to 500 notebooks, 300 sources. So it does increase it. And I pay for that personally. That's why my account is a little bit upgraded right now, the one that you're looking at. But this is what you get on the education account, which is very generous. It's a lot of stuff. And so I do want to just kind of go back to these 3 tabs though. So you'll have your sources tab, you will have your chat tab in the middle, and then you will have your studio tab on the right. And all of those tabs have different purposes. So we're going to look at that middle tab now, the chat tab, and just very quickly to kind of show you how beneficial this is. So I've added a bunch of English language arts standards. And now if I want to ask a question, I'm going to go in here and just paste. I don't type in front of people well, so I'm pasting it in, but I'm asking it to act as an ELD specialist supporting learners, focus on standard W86, which is a writing standard, and RI 89, conflicting information, and helping them distinguish between a witness and a reporter, primary, secondary sources, create a sentence frame matrix using a court analogy for each source type, provide the analogy, key glossary terms, and a sentence starter. And I'm going to go ahead and run that prompt, and you'll see the behavior of it. It acts very much like a Chat GPT or a Gemini, whatever you're accustomed to using. And it's going to go in and find an answer for me. But again, it's only basing it on the sources that I have provided. And so it's going in and doing exactly what I said. It's given me this chart with the analogy. Whoops, and I clicked too far, sorry. I clicked out of that. So it's giving me a chart with the analogy, the glossary terms, and the sentence starter over here for credibility. And when we talk about grounded sources, what that means is that inside NotebookLM, when you click one of those numbers, it's going to take you to the source, and it's going to highlight exactly where in that source that information was found. And so that's why we have less risk of hallucination with NotebookLM. I will never say no risk because there's always a risk with AI tools that it will make up something. But NotebookLM being grounded in your own trusted sources is a lot less risky than others. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide then, and we're going to talk about this Google Doc a little bit, Google Drive files, because these files, if you add from your Google Drive, a Google Docs spreadsheet, or a presentation, they will update automatically for you. And so I'm going to demonstrate that actually with this notebook that is shared. It's one of the shared resources, the webinar notebook, and it has a Google Doc in it that is the prompting guide that I've shared with you, the companion document. And so I'm going to show you what that looks like when it needs to be updated by going in there and finding. And so this is my companion document right here. It's the one that I've shared with you. I've added it to here's a resource. And when you open a Google Drive file, if it needs to be synced, in other words, if changes have happened since the last time I used it, you'll have a place here to sync it. And all you have to do is click that, and it will tell you that it's syncing. And then it will tell you when it is finished syncing, and then all the new changes that you've made since you loaded it are applied to it. So you don't have to delete it and re-upload it. So I really encourage, when you can, to use the Google Doc files. Those are a lot more, just a lot more user-friendly for that reason. And so it does take a minute. It will sync, and then it will tell me success that it has synced. It's being a little bit slow right now, but sync is successful. So now it is up to date and it matches the latest version. And so that's a really important thing. I do recommend, again, using Google Docs for that reason. And so there is also a new feature, and I think somebody might be hinting at it in the chat there. I see Matt wrote something about creating a custom prompts and customizing your chat. And that's the next thing we're going to talk about, is customizing your chat. And this is relatively new, where you can customize the whole notebook to behave in a certain way. And so if you look at the companion document, there are tabs on the left. And so we have the intro, which is kind of the things I've gone over. You have your links there, and then the introductory information. But if you go to the customizing prompts, there are several prompts here and that you can use to customize your chat. And what that does is when you paste this prompt in, I'll show you where to paste it in just a second. It tells your chat how to behave, your whole notebook how to behave. And since this is for educators, most people, or even if you're an education leader, a curriculum architect is a good prompt. And so I'm going to copy that prompt. You will see, though, there are several others that might work better for you. So you can kind of look through those. But I'm going to copy this prompt, and I'm going to go back to my newly created notebook that I created, which is here. Nope, here it is. Okay. Nope, here it is. Okay, find the right notebook. And if I want to customize this chat, up at the top of the chat window, you'll see this little icon right here. When I click that, it's going to show me that, first of all, it's going to be on default. You can make it a learning guide. That's a good one for a student. But for me, I'm going to go with custom. And I'm just going to paste that prompt in there. And if we dissect that prompt a little bit, what it says is you are an expert instructional designer specializing in, you can put whatever pedagogical strategy your school might be using. I use the 5E model and universal design for learning, which we should all be using, right, Stacy? Okay. And Jen, okay. And so I put that in there as well. And you are assisting a busy classroom teacher who needs practical implementation ready materials. Constraints, I always want you to align the outputs with specific standards in the source documents. When asked for activities, I always provide a scaffold for students who struggle, an extension for advanced learners. Do not lecture, provide actionable steps, use clear headers and bullets. And then the tone, professional, structured, and encouraging. Now, when I do this, from now on, this notebook is going to behave in that way. And so it's going to start acting like my instructional coach, and it's going to create things that are UDL aligned and that are aligned to that 5E model and aligned to the standards that I've given it. And so that's a really powerful feature, and another reason why you want to have multiple notebooks for multiple purposes, because sometimes you might not want it to be acting as a curriculum developer. So whatever the reason is that you created the notebook, you want to use that. And I'm going to actually separate my views for now and go back to my presentation for a minute. Okay, so that has given it a custom job. And this is another screenshot showing you where to click, how to configure the chat. And so that is a really helpful tool. And I think that was what he was referring to in the chat. So because of that, the ability to upload your standards and everything to do with how you teach, you can upload your frameworks, your pacing guides, your lesson plan templates, vision, mission statements, all of that, your syllabus, you can put that all into a notebook. And from that, you can deconstruct all of that complexity and deliver clarity, plain English explanations. And then we're going to get into a little further how you can really build some creative and engaging content from that notebook. But we're going to move to this next. There's a couple of high impact workflows that I want to just talk about a little bit, and we'll demonstrate those throughout the workshop today. But one is a differentiation machine. And so if you're having something really dense, like a set of standards, that is something that you can take and then you can filter it down and make like hooks and key vocabulary and activities with it. And there are lots of different ways that you can do that. And for this demonstration, I'm actually going to go into the biology notebook, and it is actually, if you want to open that notebook, it's linked on the beginning on the intro page. All of these sample notebooks that I'm using are linked here. And so I'm going into the biology one real quick, and I'm going to demonstrate how you might do that in this biology notebook. And so I'm going to ask it to help me to make sense of a standard. And you'll see that I have that same prompt in my notebook. I have it customized the same way the other one did, so it will act as a UDL expert. I put the same prompt in here, but I'm going to paste this prompt. I'm going to ask it to deconstruct the standard LS Bio 1.5 to generate a narrative hook and a scenario. And I misspelled scenario, but I will fix that. And to create a scenario, and that requires students to master to solve it. And so teaching that one standard, which a lot of biology teachers say is one of the difficult standards for students, if I want to deconstruct just that standard, and notice I have everything selected over here because all of this is my standards or my documents to break down my standards. But you can deselect if you only want something coming from 1 or 2 or 3 different sources. You can go in and select before you ask a question. And so for this one, it says the following instructional plan are aligned with this. It's been updated to LS Bio 1.5 because I've got the crosswalk in there. And so the must-dos, what they have to know, the instructional boundaries, the narrative mystery, the secret factory proposal. And again, all of them are grounded. And if I were a biology teacher, I would exercise my human oversight and judgment and really go in and kind of look at this. But because I told it I want it to address UDL, it also did that. So it scaffolds for me. It gives me color coding some scaffolding for level 2 emergent learners, and it gives me some different strategies that I can use. And so from that one standard, you can get all of that and a lot more that I'm going to show you. But I just wanted to kind of run through that real quickly. And then this is another high impact workflow that I'm not going to model for you today, but if we have any administrators on the call today, this is a really, really useful use case in a school setting or a district setting, is to create a notebook that is the administrator's brain. If you think of like a founder's brain in a company, there's all these bottlenecks in every institution I've ever worked in for knowledge. And that is, of course, made worse when you have staff turnover. And so if you create one notebook that kind of houses all of that institutional knowledge and share it with all of your staff members, they can go there and ask their questions and save a lot of emails back and forth. And you can create this for students. You can create one for parents. Well, you can't share it with parents from your educational account. We'll talk about sharing in just a second, but you can share it within your domain. So you could share it with other staff members in your domain and students in your domain if students have access to it. And so that's a really flow. Yes.
We have a couple questions in the chat or in the Q&A. Could I jump you over there for just a second and have you take a look at that?
Yep, I'll pop it open. And thank you for letting me know. I got 3 things to watch. Okay. You must sync Google files that have been updated. Yes. If you want the most recent version, when you load your notebook again, you will want to go through that sync file. I noticed you use the 5Es and UDL Foundation to configure your chat. Do you need to upload those resources to the chat, have access to those frameworks, or will Notebook be able to scrap it from the web? You should technically upload that framework or a link to that framework. It did know what I was talking about, and I don't have it in that notebook. But as a practice, I would actually send a link to like case or some website that goes through that has a good explanation of it. And that's also a way to make sure that it's personalized to the one that you want. And somebody said, I thought education institutions could not share their notebooks outside of their organization, and that is absolutely correct. This is not my educational account. I'm using my personal account so that I could share notebooks with you for this webinar today. If you are on a school account at this time, you cannot share notebooks outside of that school account. And I have spoken with some people very high up in Google and expressed that the frustration that I hear from all kinds of teachers about that. And they are looking at a solution for that. But right now that is the case. You can only share within your domain. Okay. So good questions. Thank you. Okay, so I do encourage you to try that, especially if you're a district administrator. That administrator's brain notebook can be a very valuable tool in your organization. And it's also a great starting point too. If you're new to NotebookLM and you're an administrator, that's a very high impact one that I would recommend. Now, we created a notebook a couple of minutes ago, and I uploaded some links to it. But if you don't have links, there's a new feature in NotebookLM that allows you to use the deep research that's in Google. Now, this is the one I created a minute ago. So to start a new notebook, if you're already in a notebook, you just go up and click that icon and say, I'm going to start a new notebook, and I don't really have any resources to upload. And so you can X this out. And there's this tool here called Deep Research, which some of you may be familiar with that from ChatGPT, from Gemini. It's a tool that lets you actually conduct research. It's kind of agentic. It goes off and does research for you and will help you to gather some sources. And so I am going to put a prompt in there and let it be working. And then we're going to go through that prompting framework. This is one that takes a little while. And so I'm going to go ahead and drop my prompt in and let it be working. And then we're going to go back to the slides and look at that a little bit. But notice there are 2 types of research. And I'm going to do the deep one because I want the most in-depth information. And so when I choose that, then I'm going to put my prompt right here. And I've copied and pasted this prompt. It's also in the document. So if you want to try it, if you're working along with me and you go to this deep research right here, this is the framework that I've created. And then this prompt that I just used is under the example deep research prompt right there. And then there's also kind of a framework you can follow. But I'm going to go ahead and run that. And what it's going to do is it's going off and doing my research for me, and it's going to find some good quality sources for me to populate my notebook with. So if I'm starting with a brand new research topic that maybe I don't know anything about, this is a good way to start it. But it does take a few minutes. And so while that's running, we're going to kind of go back to the presentation, kind of be mindful of time. And I'm going to go through this framework just very, very quickly. This is a framework I created for any deep research tool, whether you're ChatGPT, Gemini, or whatever, but you need to give it a little more information than a normal prompt. You need to give it a driving question and a goal, what you expect of evidence. Like, do you want just peer-reviewed study, educational resources, government resources, the extent and scope, like time period, geography, grade bands, the process and task, what you want the model to do, the expected output format, how do you want it to return this information to you, and then what kind of references you want and how do you want them cited. It will actually do your MLA citations, your APA citations, or whatever you want. And I do see another question in the chat. Are there existing collections and shared libraries that teachers can use or adapt? There are a few that they announced very recently that are called, and I have one of them. Let me find that for you while this is running. It should keep running, but I'm going to go over here and I'll show you. I have one, it's called Stacks. There are a few open stacks, that's what it is. And they have some notebooks that you can go in and adapt if you go to openstacks.com. And I don't think I have it on this account, but there are a few notebooks that are out there. And that's another recent update that are textbooks that are really, really good. And so you can go in and find those. This one has featured notebooks. Your school account won't show featured notebooks, but this is one of the examples of a notebook that you can take and adapt, and they have them for other subject matters also. And so this one, as you can see, it's already populated, it's broken down by unit, and it has all these resources created with it. So for that answer, yes, there are some that you can go in and adapt, but this is still running. So I'm going to go back to the presentation and keep moving along, and we'll go back and check on that. But if I would have loved to have this tool as a graduate student or a college student, because it really does a lot for you in the way of synthesizing the research. And so the old way you had to manually read and code everything. Now you can just either upload your sources or use deep research to get it, gather the material, upload it, write focus prompts, and then create with it. But this is we'll try one of these prompts when this finishes, but when you get all those resources in there, then you can really do some deep analysis and synthesis, like what are the central disagreements, what details appear in multiple sources or only one source, which method has the strongest evidence base, how would I use this in the real world. You can kind of engage with those resources and ask questions of them. And it takes a while, so we will keep checking back on that notebook, the one I just created, while it's finishing up. But because our time is very short and we have lots of things on the agenda, oh, there it is, it's going to finish. And so it's about to finish. I'll stay on the page for just a second. And while that, we'll look at the prompt that I put in, following that deeper framework. I tell it what I'm trying to achieve. I tell it which sources I want it to look at. I give it a time frame. I don't want stuff from 2012, 2018. I want stuff from since 2024, since ChatGPT and AI has been there. I want it to focus on gold standard PBL, and I want it to prioritize high quality papers, and I give it some specific people I want it to focus on. And then based on them, I want to create actionable frameworks for co-designing projects, operationalizing AI. And so it's going to give me some resources here, and I can go in and look at my sources and it will let me roll through there. And if I were really doing this, I would take time and dig through all of them, but I'm going to just say they're all fabulous and I'm going to import them. Now I have myself a new notebook full of high quality sources that I've specified based on the topic that I'm looking at. And this time is modern PBL. And so it's just a way to automatically curate and create a notebook from nothing if you have nothing. And so I just wanted to demonstrate that, but I'm going to move along because I want to spend most of our time today in the studio. And the studio is that third tab in every Google notebook. So whichever one I have, I'm going to close a couple of them down because I'm getting too many. So in the third tab of the notebook, the studio is your creation machine. That's where you can create lots of content, lots of different artifacts like slide decks, audio overviews, infographics, and more. And what we're going to do is we're going to very quickly roll through what you can do in there. And then I'm going to go in and do some live demonstrations. But first of all, when you're prompting NotebookLM, just like prompting any other large language model, the better your input, the better your output is going to be. If you just go to NotebookLM and you say, summarize this source, you're going to get pretty generic content. And so you want to take on the role of a director. And this is framework also from Phil Alcock. And so that means defining the role, the audience, the format you want. That's really important. And then I'm going to demonstrate chaining your prompts together. That means like I could do a deep research report, and I could take that and turn it into a note, and I could turn it into a source. And then from that source, I can create an infographic, a video, an audio, whatever I want to do. And I'll demonstrate that for you in a minute. But you also want to think in assets. Like if you were doing that administrator's mind notebook that I talked about a few minutes ago, instead of going to it and saying, you know, what does the handbook say about tardies? Think about what kind of asset you could create. And so you could instead create an infographic that outlines the workflow to how do you deal with tardies. And so you could get an actual artifact out of it that's a lot more user-friendly and reusable than just asking a question. And so we'll demonstrate a lot of that. But I do want to talk about reports just briefly. It's one of the, I think, more underused features, but it's also one of the most versatile. In particular, I think for administrators, people in administration positions, this is going to be one of the best tools for you. And so I just want to briefly address them. Of course, you start with your sources again, but applying that director prompt, you tell it what kind of, who you want it to be, give it a persona, an audience, and a format. And so you could take something very dense like a board policy. Who loves to read board policies? And you could say, okay, I want you to turn that into a briefing for my whatever, parent communication, my school board, my teachers. You can specify the audience and get different outputs different ways. As a teacher, you can use it to take something like a curriculum or a pacing guide and turn that into a sub-plan when you're going to be out. When I was a teacher, it was a lot more work to be out than it was to be there. And I'd say that's still the case. And so it can really help you with things like that. Or you can have it break down a standard like I did in the illustration I did earlier. So you can get really polished outputs from it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a notebook, and this time I'm going into the main webinar notebook here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to unselect, because I don't want to ask it to create something on all of these sources because that's going to be too much. And so I want to make sure that I have unselected most everything. And I'm going to select only a few sources. I'm going to find the webinar I'm going to find the Google Notebook. I want something about security, so that I'm going to create a proposal for an administrator, and I'm going to ask them to do a pilot for me. So I want something about security for sure. And then I have one called Level Up Student Learning that I'm going to pull in. And I have a lot of notebooks, a lot of resources, so that makes it a little difficult to find things, but I will find it. There's one, and it's also by Phil Alcock. And then I have one, a prompting guide that I created, the Notebook LM prompting guide. And so I'm going to find that one, the Educator's Prompting Guide. Okay, so I've selected 3 resources, and that's all it's going to pull from. And then I'm going to go into the reports up here. This is one of the things in the studio. And notice whenever you load reports, there are several kinds that you can do every time. There's always going to be a create your own, a briefing doc, a study guide, and a blog post. And then it's going to have some context aware suggestions based on the sources I've selected. And so it says, okay, based on these, you might want a strategic plan, a policy brief, an instruction manual, or a concept explainer. I don't want any of those, but I wanted you to see those as options. And anytime you see something with a pencil, then you can customize it. And what it's done is it's kind of started a prompt for you to get that output, and you can go in there and customize it. But I'm actually going to go into the create your own report, and then I'm going to tell it to act as a department head. And so I'm going to go ahead and paste this prompt in. I do a lot of cheating. I've got my prompts already, so I can paste them in. But I'm asking it to act as a department head, proposing a new pilot for the school, create a formal proposal memo. So I want an executive summary. I want reassuring details why this is FERPA compliant based on that traffic light protocol. I want an implementation plan. And I want to explain that we don't have to pay for it. It's economical. And so when I click generate, you'll see over here that it is generating. And these take time also. But what I do a lot of times is I'll get several things generating at once. On the education plan, you do want to be careful, though, because you will be limited. And so if you're not careful, you'll accidentally click that, and it will just start generating one without any customization. And so if there is a pencil, I recommend you always click the pencil and customize it and make it what you want it to be. And so I'm going to let that be creating, and then we'll look at it again in a second. But I'm going to also go to the next slide while that's doing that, and we'll kind of pop back and see that report in a minute. But there's another tool here called a mind map that is very, very beneficial, but it's not as easily customizable. It doesn't have a pencil on it, and if I click it, it's just going to start creating a mind map. I'm not going to get too many things creating at the same time because I don't want it to bog down my video, but it doesn't have the customization options that others do. And so if I were to ask it to create a mind map on all of this stuff, it's going to be like a spider web. It's not going to be very useful. And so what you want to do instead is you want to kind of a hack is to either create a source that would work for a mind map better, or make sure that you're very careful about the selections there. And what it will do is it will allow you to go in and dig into it a little more. But I'm going to go in, let's see if that created first. No, it's still creating. So I'm going to go into my 8th grade and show you an example of a mind map that I created with a special prompt. And in this prompt, what I did is I first of all created a timeline, because the curriculum is not chronological, and I wanted to put the events in chronological order. And so I first created a timeline, and I just selected that timeline. And if you look at it, it goes through the history of North Carolina and the United States in chronological order. And so from that resource only, I created this mind map. And again, it's already done, but you can do this like with your standards. Whoops. Okay. Click the wrong thing. You can do it with your whole standards or whatever, but what it does is each one of these, it breaks down. And if there's a caret there, it breaks it down even further. And any one of these that you want to dig into more, say if I want to know about the Cherokee, I can click any one of the nodes in there, and it goes into a chat window, and you can ask and inquire about that particular node. So it can be a very useful resource, but you really need to think through how you're going to use it and prep a source to use it effectively. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the audio overviews, which I'm not going to spend much time on because I think most everybody has seen these AI-generated podcasts were all the rage about a year ago when this first came out. And they're still very useful, and students really do like them, so I don't want to downplay them, but it's just something I think most people have seen. But you can create an AI podcast from a notebook, and I'll go in here, and that's just up here, but notice it does have a pencil, and so I do recommend customizing it, and that report is finished. So I'm going to go into that, and then we'll get to some of the other resources. But this is what I just created from that report. And so it gives me this very well laid out, very professional proposal based on the information that I selected, including that framework. And then about implementation, about who can use it. And so it does a really, really good job. Would save me a tremendous amount of time. But I'm going to go back to the studio again. And so for the audio podcast, I'm not going to play one because, again, I feel like most people have seen that. But we're going to look at some of the other types of them. But they are very useful for student learning. You could create one even if your students don't have access to NotebookLM, you can download it and put it in Google Drive and share it with them that way, and they can listen to it. So it's a great way. A lot of students are more auditory learners, and somebody asked, will there be a recording? And there will be a recording. It usually takes a couple of days to get those posted. My dear friend Lauren on here does that work for me. And so there will be a recording, and we'll share it on our website, and I'll email it out as well. Okay, so classroom use cases for student learning, parent communication, but you do want to remember that prompting framework. You want to always tell, to have a role, tell who it's for, and you also want to make sure, like with the audio format, with the audio podcast, you can kind of customize what each character does. And there are new types of them now. You can do a debate. You can do, for the podcast, you can do a debate if you go into the overview, a critique, a debate, a brief, and a deep dive. And so, and they're coming out with one that's going to be like a lecture that's just one voice, and that's something that they're working on now. And so very useful, don't want to downplay them, but you can also do video overviews now. And so video overview takes it another step. You get those AI generated voices, but with imagery as well. So I do tend to like those a little better. You can create like safety lab explainers, visual companions, and so forth. But the key to all of these is your customization. And so we're going to look at the deep dive companion again. And if you go to the 4th tab that says NotebookLM prompting, it starts out with that framework, be the director framework, but it gives you some examples as well. And so instead of just clicking that button and saying create a video overview, it's going to be very generic. And so instead you want to ask for something. And I'm going to demonstrate the prompt chaining also. So in the chat, I asked for an activity, so I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in there and kind of demonstrate this. So from one chat, I can save it as a note, save it as a source, and then create multiple outputs from it. And so we won't create all of them because of time, but I'm just going to demonstrate that, and then I'll show you the outputs that I did create. And so for this one, I'm going into my 8th grade social studies notebook, and I'm going here to the chat, and I'm going to leave everything selected this time, except for the timeline. And I'm going to just ask it as a curriculum coach to create 3 bias detection scenarios. So I'm teaching my kids to identify bias. And instead of just a standard quiz, I want to present a fictional diary entry about the Battle of Guilford Courthouse written by a British soldier and one by a militia member. And so assuming it does a really good job, I don't need to make any changes. I can save it as a note, or I can go in and say, hey, I want you to change this. So you really want to evaluate it, but I'm going to pretend it's awesome. And I'm going to save it as a note. And once you save something as a note, you can see the different icons over here. This indicates it's a note, and you can save it as a source. And once you convert it to a source, you can select it over here as the only source, and you can create any of these outputs from it. And so that is what I did earlier. And I'm just going to show you the outputs because it does take time. And I'll show you the prompts I used to create them. And again, you have access to this notebook as well. So you can go in and see my prompts also. And so from that, I created a video explainer. And so I'm going to just open it up. And notice that you can see the prompt. And I think you can do that even if you're, I don't know, if you're just viewing it. You can go in there and you can see that I didn't just click the button and say, create me a video overview. I give a very specific, explicit directions of what I want it to do, who the audience is, what the purpose of it is, what the standard is, what I'm trying to get it to do. And you can also specify style. And so I could say I want it to be, you know, whatever kind of style, anime, comic book, graphic novel, watercolor, whatever your heart's desire. And so I did that, and I'm just going to play just a snippet of it because to me, this is way better than an audio overview because I'm more of a visual learner. Okay, and can y'all hear that okay?
Not coming across.
Can you hear it? Stacy, what was that?
Yeah, the audio wasn't.
The audio is not coming across. Okay. I probably forgot to do that when I shared. So I'm going to unshare real quick and share again and make sure I select that little button down there that says audio tab. because I do want you to hear this. So I'm going to do that. Share audio. Okay. Another little snippet. We won't play much, but.
Huge battle in the American Revolution. Back on March 15, 1781, at Guilford Courthouse, two soldiers saw the exact same fight, but man, did they tell different stories.
Okay, and I would love to play the whole thing for you because this does a phenomenal job given these very specific directions that I gave it. But we are almost out of time already. It goes so fast, so I'm not going to. But I just want to show you that chaining prompting idea that I just showed you. I did the chat. I saved the note. I saved it as a source. And from that one source, I was able to make all of these things. I made that, that audio, and then I did this beautiful graphic, which I think did a really, really good job of telling whose story it was. If I wanted to make like some anchor charts or something like that for my classroom based on a standard. But again, specific instructions. And so I didn't just say create a graphic. I said, this is for my 8th grade. I gave it the information, and the resource that I linked it to had lots of stuff on it. And so you can create just amazing content, architecting your own content. I also did a podcast. I did a slide deck about it. And so the slide deck did a really good job also. And so all of this content just from that one chat question that I have based on my grounded sources in my closed box AI system. And so that's one of the main points of today's session, but we're almost out of time. So I'm going to move along a little bit. If you haven't been in a couple months, you can also do flashcards and quizzes. But again, you want to customize them. If you look at your DeepDive notebook prompting guide, you can see some ideas for customizing these too, because if I just click that flashcard button, guess what? It's going to give me definition on one side, memory on one side, very low level, no advanced questioning. So you can customize even the flashcards to be something more deep and worth doing. And so again, in that NotebookLM, the 8th grade one, if you look down through here, you can see the different icons for it. There are some flashcards. That's something else. Let's see, there are my flashcards. And so these flashcards, instead of just clicking the button and getting flashcards, I said, hey, I want you to act as a museum curator. Create a set of 12 flashcards for primary and secondary sources. Do not use generic terms. On the front, I want a description of a specific historical artifact. And on the back, I want the source type, primary or secondary, and the readability rating. And so not just generic output. You want to really customize even those. And you can do the same with quizzes if we had time. I do encourage you to kind of look through these prompts in these resources, which I'm pretty sure you can, but lots of things that you can create from one thing. And that's what we call prompt chaining. And so I am going to move along because time is getting away, but also infographics. I showed you the one infographic I created already, but this is a great way to create your anchor charts, and then go, if you've got a poster printer or whatever, you can put them in Canva and have them printed out. And so again, though, you want to make sure you're customizing for infographics also. And this document has lots of information on prompting for infographics as well. You can use one to explain a process, compare items, show a timeline. You want to give it structure and constraints and styles whenever you're asking for things. And so there's a few examples there to try. For all of these, there are example prompts galore. And so I encourage you to get in and spend some time and dig around and see what you can create as well using that prompting guide. But do also always specify clear structure. And one of my tricks is I keep my style guide. Notice that all of these slides match. And if you look in the lower right-hand corner of almost every one of them, they were created in NotebookLM. And so they all look the same because I keep my style guide handy. And when I put my prompt in, I add my style guide to the bottom. And the way I do that is in Google Keep. I just keep my Google Keep style guide handy, and I just copy and paste it so that they all match. And I actually created this whole slide deck in Google NotebookLM. And the way that I did that, you have to get around the 10,000 character limit sometimes. And so I'm going to skip by this because we looked at that resource already. But there is a 10,000 character limit for customization. And a hack to that, if you have something that's longer than 10,000 characters, is you put it in a Google Doc and you name it something like script or directions for whatever. And then whenever you go into your notebook, you can, let's see, I did it on this one. And so like this, I will find you, I'm in the DeepDive one. And so I created this whole slide deck in here, and it's way down. There's a lot of stuff in here, but I will find it for you. So this is my slide deck that you're looking at now. It'll look familiar because this is how I created it. But notice my prompt is create a slide deck using this document as a guide. And there was a document over here that has my whole outline in it. And so if you scroll down enough, you'll see it. There's one over there that says outline for NotebookLM. And so I went in and said what I want on every single page. I gave it the outline. I gave it the text I want, and it does the beautification for me. Beautification is not my strong suit. And so, but I still get exactly what I want. And so that is, and I just downloaded this. So you go right here to download it. And the way that I do, sometimes because it is AI, sometimes it will make a spelling mistake. And I found that I can correct things, even though this output is not itself editable, because these are all images. I pull them into Canva and I edit them there. And there are some slides to show you how to do that. Because in Canva, you have these wonderful tools, magic edit tools. You have a text grab tool that will grab the text and let you edit it. You have a magic grab that will let you take an item and move it. And you have you have an eraser that'll let you erase something that you didn't want. You can edit them some in Canva. The editing, and also NotebookLM, the people who made this tool said that they are working on making them editable. And so in the near future, hopefully very near future, they will become editable natively, like in a Google slide deck. But that is a little bit out. Okay, so I will move along. This is something that just a fantastic idea that I found that I wanted to share with you. And I'd hoped we'd have more time to go into it. But Eric Kurtz, who a lot of people know, the Control-Alt-Delete guy, shared a post last week about creating graphic novels using Gemini and NotebookLM. And he also shared a gem, which if you are familiar with Gemini, it's like a little custom chatbot that you can use to create your script for it. And then you put it in NotebookLM and create a slide deck from it. On this document, if you go to the last tab there, the Making Graphic Novels, it has the link to his blog post. It has the link to his gem. And then also I took that and I came up with 10 North Carolina standard specific ideas. And I didn't get them all created, but I created several of them, and you can see them in that NotebookLM, but they're linked here as well as having pages underneath there. So if you go down through there, like this one, I told it to do Nightmare Before Christmas style because it's about skeletal support system for 5th grade. And so you can specify in your prompt. And this one is an 8th grade social studies one. There's one about viruses and how they invade the cell for biology. And if you want to look at any of those further, they're all right here. This is one I created also just for a poem. I was an English language arts teacher as well as a social studies teacher. And I just gave it the text of the poem in a style of watercolor. I said the prompt I gave it was to create the poem using a whimsical impressionist style watercolor illustrations. And so I would have loved to have had this. You could basically create your own poetry books for your students, and they look good. And so there are all kinds of other ones in here. The ones that so the sit in silence, these are the ones that I showed you: structure, power, motion, drips of water. And there's one, let's see, there's another one here that I did steampunk style, the enzyme locksmith, about gears of life. And so I did that one like steampunk style. So use your imagination with the styles. He's talking about graphic novel style, which this basically is too, but you can have additional styles beyond graphic novels. Okay, I am officially out of time. And as usual, I did not quite finish, but there are several slides there if you're not a Canva user to guide you in how to edit your content in Canva if you do see mistakes. And this is a tool that would be fantastic for students, but most students probably don't have access to it. It has to be turned on the school domain by your administrator. And I'm going to do another session later, and Stacy's also doing one about ways it can be used in the classroom, but they can be shared through Google Classroom now. And so if you haven't seen that, it's a new option in Google Classroom. But just as a call to action, just kind of to end today, I really encourage you to try this tool. This is the best entry-level tool for sure. And honestly, it's become one of my favorite tools. I use a lot of AI tools. And so I encourage you to try it. Remember that protocol for making sure you're safe, and start your first blueprint. Think about your particular role and how you might use it, and just dive in and try it. I would ask that you provide feedback on the webinar today. I'm going to stick around for Q&A. I see some hands up. But we would ask you provide feedback. Feedback is very valuable to us. And so if you didn't, sorry, Brian, did I not add it to the webinar? Sorry.
It's added now. Stacy took care of it.
Cover me. I forgot to do that. And so if you don't mind, fill out the feedback form. We would appreciate it. And I also just want to point out, if this slide deck is helpful to you, there's a template link right here where you can make a copy and edit it and use it for your context if you do training or anything like that. And then I just will stick around and answer some questions. I'm sorry I held you over a couple of minutes. I'll try to end on time, but I will stick around for a few minutes if anybody wants to stick around for questions. I did see a hand go up, and I'm looking in Q&A. I'll look in chat and see if there's anything there. But feel free to drop a question in if you want. We can also allow unmuting if we want. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. I'm going to stop the recording and stick around for chat. I'm going to go in and allow, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. Let's see. Let's turn the chat back on, and let's see if I can turn on, let people unmute. I'm trying to, okay, I'm going to let you turn on your microphone if somebody wants to ask a question instead of typing it in your video. If anybody has a question, we're happy to hang out. Okay, I see a raised hand. Amy, if you want to just unmute or drop in the chat, whichever.
Hey, thank you. I have two questions. One, do you suggest that this be open for students in grades 6 through 12? I know I kind of missed, and I also was going to ask about that sharing. I knew the teachers could share within our domain, but I did not know if it was able to be shared with students, and I just really wanted your opinion.
Well, personally, I mean, I think this is one of the safest ways to introduce AI, and one of the most useful as well. And so if I were a district administrator, I would open it for 6 to 12, but I would make sure that the students had their AI literacy basics down first, as well as the teachers, of course. But it does have to be allowed by the Google administrator. And so those students would not be able to access it unless the Google administrator turned it on for them. And so maybe start a trial like with the high school and see how it goes. But it's such a useful tool for studying, and students can personalize their own notebooks and create them for their own purposes. And like I said, we are having, both Stacy and I are doing some work around that, student uses. And so there'll be a couple of webinars coming up about student uses. But it's probably the safest and most useful tool out there, in my opinion.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I did see another question. Thank you, Marla. I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words in the chat. And I'm looking to see if anybody has another question, or if you want to unmute. I have set it so you can unmute now. Already using it, but the tips are great. Fantastic. Do you have any specific resources for ELL high school teachers who want to get started? I would say starting with your state standards is always the best place. And if you're in North Carolina and other states as well, there's usually, in addition to the standards, there's other resources like crosswalks and information about how to break the standards down. And then also you can upload your pacing guide. If you have a digital textbook that has like a PDF version or a link, that would be a good thing. You could kind of evaluate that against the standards and see where there are gaps and things like that. You could do a lot with that, but I would start with your school specific standards or resources, your state standards, and then anything that you use in your workflow daily, like if you have a lesson plan template or, pacing guides, anything like that, I would add also. But you can put, poems and books and things like that in there too. Of course, always mindful of copyright, but anything that you use in your curriculum at all would be a great way. I don't know if the OpenStax has any ELA resources yet. I think it's mostly math and science, but like on a personal account, like in my account, you can also go in and see like featured notebooks. They don't allow that at the school level either. There might be featured notebooks that you find useful as well. Okay.
And Vera, the other thing I would chime in, are you answering John Walsh's question right now? The ELA teacher question?
Yeah, that's the one I was answering.
Yeah. So I dropped a link in the chat to the notebook repository that we created a little while ago. And one of the things when we were working with ELA was to go, and I don't know if he's from North Carolina or not, John.
Source doc, Stacy, do you mind?
Yeah, I popped it in the chat. And it's just, we went to the DPI website for the ELA specialists, and you just kind of combed through there for useful resources, and in addition to the standards, and got their recommendations for question stems, and they have an academic discourse playbook that is just chock full of curated resources, and just in PD that they've done when they were rolling out the new standards and things like that, and thought everybody has attended PD on that, and of course we remember every single thing that we do when we go to PD, right? Probably not, but NotebookLM will remember, and then you can automatically pull all of that stuff into your lesson plans. And so there's an example Google Doc with all of that in there, and maybe that'll jog some ideas.
Okay, and I did add that to the companion document as well, Stacy, the link that Stacy put in the chat, so you'll have that as a reference also. Okay, thank you so much. We'll keep hanging out. I'm getting blinded from the left, so pardon my sunshine. I'm gonna have to get up and close my blinds, but I'm glad to see some sunshine. But we'll hang out. I'm gonna go ahead and end the chat, but I'll hang out for a few more minutes if anybody does have any particular questions.
Hey, did you mention something about Gemini, NotebookLM being a source in Gemini?
No, I didn't. I should have mentioned that, but it is not on the education domain yet, but it is coming where you can choose your NotebookLMs as a source on your Gemini. I do have it on this account, and it's super useful. So if you go to Gemini, on my school account, I don't have it yet, but when you click the add sources, NotebookLM, you can choose any notebook that you have as a source. And so that even adds more value to it, the fact that you can pull different notebooks, because that's one thing, is they're each segmented and they don't cross over. But this is one way that you can kind of work with Gemini to pull things from various notebooks. And so that's coming soon. You notice, I don't know if they'll put the photos in the school domains or not, but I've got a couple of other things on my pro account that are super useful in Gemini.
It's like a but wait, there's more kind of situation.
But wait, there's more. And they posted on Twitter a couple days ago that they're ready to start shipping again. So we'll start seeing some new updates this week, hopefully. More new updates. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the kind words in the chat. I haven't gotten to see all of them and answer them, but we appreciate all of you. Have a good evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you're at.